This is Support is Sexy, episode 228, with Andrea Barrica, founder of O.School. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I interview inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and their lessons to help you take your business and your life to the next level and create something sexy. Here we go. Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so excited to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. And today you're going to love our conversation with our guest, Andrea Barrica. Andrea is the founder of a new company called O.School. O.School. Love the URL. You have to check it out. And Andrea's mission for O.School, in summary, in my paraphrasing of it, is to really create a safe space for sex-positive conversations for women and gender-diverse folks. So she has this fantastic mission. She's boldly out there creating this company, creating this platform that is really a safe space for people to feel like they can have the discussions that they need to around sex, ask the questions that they need to around sex. And what I love about Andrea, too, is that she is really combining her activism with her skill as an entrepreneur, because she is also the co-founder of inDinero, which is a company that initially raised $1.2, I believe it was, $1 million. It's an accounting software company, and the company has gone on to do great things, even though they went through a tough time, which she talks about in this episode, how she and her very close friend until this day and co-founder, Jessica Ma, went through that period. But Andrea also was a pitch coach for several years and has helped companies raise more than $80 million. So now that she's creating this new company, O.School, she is combining all of that experience and creating something to really have an impact in the world that really aligns with who she is. So on this episode from Andrea, you'll learn about becoming and showing up as your true self, the power of the right mentor investing in you, the value of having a cheerleader on your team, because support is sexy, how shame limits our forward movement. We had a great discussion about shame and the power of shame and how it controls a lot of us and how we can get past that. Also tapping into empathy as your superpower in business, how emotional intelligence impacts your bottom line, the 3 key jobs of a CEO, Andrea's top tips for a great investor pitch, and how to learn to read the room. She also talks about how to focus on the highest impact activity. I always talk about the one thing, and she has some great things to say about that. So you're going to hear that from Andrea and so much more. I know you're going to love this. For more information on her and on O.School, make sure after you listen, you go to supportissexypodcast.com, go to the search box, and just type Andrea, Andrea. All right, so now, without further ado, Andrea Barrica. So, Andrea, welcome to an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so excited to chat with you.
Thank you so much, Elayne. It's great to be here.
Excellent. So, first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
So, my journey to be an entrepreneur never really started with a love of entrepreneurship, actually. I was studying to be an endangered languages linguist at UC Berkeley. I never had any interest in entrepreneurship, technology, business, any of that, actually. And after I graduated from college, I was planning to move to China. And then one day I get a call from my freshman roommate in college who was an entrepreneur. She was an amazing computer scientist, an entrepreneur, and I knew that she was going to start her next company, and I wished her well. But anyways, I saw her name on my phone and I answered it, and she said, "Andrea, I need you to move to Mountain View, right, and be my second-hand woman, and help me build this great company that I'm building, which is called inDinero. It's an accounting software." Mm-hmm. And I'm obviously floored. I don't really know why she's calling me. I had no business technology background at all. And she just said, no, like you're someone I really trust. You're someone that I really love. It needs to be you. Like, just come to Mountain View. And we talked. And it's funny because I didn't know anything about technology. So at the time she was like, we just got into Y Combinator. which, if you don't know, is a really well-known tech accelerator with like really large companies that have come out of. But I didn't know that. I'd never read TechCrunch. I'd never done that. So I was like, oh, well, congratulations. That sounds cool. Right. And so, but the reason that got me to kind of go to Mountain View and visit her was just because I loved my friend. I wanted to support my awesome, my awesome friend. And, that changed the entire trajectory of my life. So I ended up joining her, and we built a company together over the next 3.5 years. And it was one of the most difficult, challenging, and transformational times in my life. And through that, it was really like, being in the trenches of being in a startup. I didn't even fall in love with it in my first company because it was so new. I was still, learning about it. It was really when after 3.5 years, we built the company. It died. We ran out of funding. We had to kind of bootstrap, meaning like start over on a new business model. And I led that. And it was really kind of coming out of that experience that I realized that this was what I meant to do. But I wouldn't say that I ever knew my love of entrepreneurship. Another woman thought bigger for me than I thought for myself. And that's why I'm here today.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's amazing that for both of you, you really wanted to support your friend. And for her, she didn't seem to care that wasn't exactly your experience. She wanted her friend there and someone she trusted to be there. So
absolutely. And she said this really interesting thing. I'll never forget it. She said, Warren Buffett, the billionaire,
right,
always said, she said that she read in a book that Warren Buffett advised having someone around who lacked the institutional imperative, which is a very fancy way of saying like doesn't know what's going on, isn't part of the industry. And so she knew that I was really opposite from her. She's she's just one of the most powerful and confident business people I've ever met. Just, she can come off really powerful and aggressive and to a lot of people. And for me, I'm very empathetic and, I love people of working with feelings and emotions and all of that. And so I thought those two things were what made her think that, I was the right person to come on with her and help her build the company.
Now, did you, a couple of questions. Did you have any fear about going into this new business, not even just an industry that you weren't familiar with, this totally new business, a path that you weren't thinking about at the time? Did you have any hesitations or any thoughts about maybe I shouldn't do this or these are the reasons I shouldn't?
That's a great question, Elayne. So I was 20 years old. I was a child. And it's funny, if I knew now if I knew then what I knew now, I wouldn't have done it. It would have been this is absurd. And,
right.
I ended up becoming a startup investor. And, I wouldn't have invested in the team that we were. It was two 20-year-olds and a 19-year-old building accounting software where none of us were CPAs. None of us did accounting.
And you raised a lot of money, right?
We did. We raised 1.1 million with great terms with great investors, right? Like Steve Blank himself, founder of Yelp, founder of YouTube, really great investors. Dave McClure, awesome investors, and we were a YC company as well. So we had that going for us, which I think I attest to Jess. And this was 2010 when she did this. Which there were no women in tech, there were no people of color in tech. It was just all the problems that we know now were just that much worse. 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But so of course but then you know what? I was so inexperienced. I didn't even know what I was getting into. I didn't even really know. I never knew about startups. So I was I'm just going to go and start this tech company with my freshman roommate in college. And it's going to be a nice side gig. And to be honest with you, if I've never really told anyone this, but I was, I had just moved in with my, with a partner at the time. And I was fighting with my parents in a really big way. And so, it was also this timing where I was kind of declaring my independence from my family. And so I had a financial need. I actually was because at the time I was a linguist, I never really cared about money growing up. I really cared about, I had other passions. I've really always been, interested in activism and social justice. And these are not things that go hand in hand with working for a tech company in my mind at the time. Now I think very differently, but, so there's also that. I was, kind of going against my parents' Filipino American views, and I'd moved in with someone before marriage. And so my personal life was in kind of upheaval, and it was a way for me to make some money. And even making very little salary at a startup is more than, what a linguist would make.
Right. Now, the other question I wanted to ask about inDinero in particular was, you mentioned that, you guys grew the business and then ran out of funding and had to reinvent. And startups alone are stressful enough, but startups that go through that process are super stressful. How did that affect your friendship? How were you guys able to maintain through that?
It was hard. It was hard. It wasn't, and one of the things that I really look back on is, I really loved her and she really loved me, and we weren't that close. I mean, we lived together as freshman roommates in college, and we had a lot of respect for each other, which I think brought us through. And the fact that we were so different, of course, at times that was a huge, huge point of conflict between us. But when we were on the same page, when we were aligned, like, we were unstoppable. We led this company, and I think it was that combination that got us through the hard times. And of course, there were times I was crying in Italian restaurants, like, Jess, I'm working like 70 hours a week. Like, give me, see me, see this, and we would, and she would the same thing with me. Like, she would just, I was more of her executor. Like, I was her kind of operations COO, like, I was a later co-founder. So that was Jess's baby, right? Like, I was coming in and helping my friend raise her baby. I call myself inDinero's stepmom, right? I'm a CEO now. And so knowing now what and what she was going through with fundraising and all that pressure and everything, she, for how stressful that must have been for her, I definitely can, like, empathize with her a lot more now. But yeah, and I think also people are really surprised that I left the company, right? She didn't want me to leave 3.5 years in. I ended up leaving because I wanted something with more purpose for me personally. And we were able to so this is really, really, really unique. Today's her birthday, and I'm sleeping, and we're having a sleepover at her house tonight. Like, so
happy birthday, Jess.
Yeah, happy birthday, Jess. So she, so we still, like, I left the company, and people are really surprised to hear that we're still really close friends, because usually when a co-founder leaves, there's conflict, there's problems, and, like, that relationship's usually really kind of wounded from that. Right. And of course there was a couple hard months after I left, but we were really committed to each other as, like, family members. We've always thought of each other as, like, more than that. And when you go through something so difficult like what we went through, there was kind of definitely there. So yeah, we're having a sleepover tonight.
I love it. That's wonderful. It's a happy ending. I love it. So now tell us, where did you grow up, Andrea? Did you grow up in California?
I did. I was born in Sacramento. I'm in the Valley. And I have great parents who immigrated to America. So my mom was like 7 months pregnant with me, I think, when she came to the United States.
Wow. So
I'm as close to a first generation immigrant as it gets. And it was really great. I have a little brother and sister that we were all really close. It was difficult. They were in some ways, like, just so new to American culture, and I was this child growing up here. So, the general first generation challenges of having to kind of navigate growing up in a very traditional Filipino family, but, growing up in America, definitely led to conflict. I ended up leaving home at 16 and went to college a little early. And that's where I met Jess. Jess and I met there.
What would you say that you were like overall as a little girl growing up?
It's funny. I call that, like, my representative self. Like, I was, there's a person you're supposed to be when you're growing up in, like, a Filipino family. And interestingly, I was so much more ambitious than my parents. Like, they were proud of me. Like, I always knew my parents loved me and were proud of me. But what they really I felt like when I was a kid, what they really wanted for me was to have kids, and get married, have kids. They were really, I helped out around the house a lot. I was really obedient. I was an oldest child. So in Filipino culture, the oldest daughter, you're like a real authority in the house. So my little brother and sister really looked up to me. I was in charge of helping them and looking after them from a really early age. So I was very dutiful, very obedient, followed rules. And then there came a point around 15, 16 where I started to kind of grow out of the town I was in. I was arguing with my teachers. I was completely I wasn't connected to my sexuality. I will say that, especially since, you're going to hear about O.School soon. Mm-hmm. Like, I wasn't connected to my body and sexuality, mostly because I knew I was queer. Like, I knew I knew I was queer, but, being Catholic Filipino and having so much shame around sexuality in me, I wouldn't say that was like a part of it. I was just really a bookworm and, trying to be a good daughter.
And like you say, your representative being there. I like that, the way that you phrased that, just thinking about, I think a lot of us depending on our households and how we grew up, there is a part of you that is really sending your representative until you get the courage to be who you really are, and the space to get in the space, I should say, to be who you really are.
Absolutely. It was the courage, and it was also just, no one asked me who I was. Like there was a person that I was supposed to be, and I got good at playing that person. Like I got really comfortable playing that person, but that wasn't who I was. Like you said, it was just someone that I had to be to survive. And then I left home, and that's when kind of, it was a very long journey. I would say that, I am just now getting to the point where, there's this, one thing I like to say is that healing is a lifelong journey toward wholeness. And I am just now there. And I would say leaving home was when that started, because before that, my identity was kind of made for me.
When did you get to the point where you felt most comfortable being who you really are? I know it's, as you said, it's an evolution, a continuing process, but when did you get to the point, do you think, around that age where you felt like, okay, in this space, I can really be who I am?
I would say last year. Actually, I would say it was the start of this company. This is my third company. And I went through, I'll kind of take up the story. After I left inDinero, I was in a deep depression. I was in a deep, just fuzzy loss. Like first of all, I thought I was going to be an academic and a linguist and an activist forever. I knew in sixth grade, I knew when I was like 12 or 13 that I really wanted to do that. And I had built my whole life on that path. And then when I graduated college, that path was I changed that path. And from age 20 to 23, I was a startup tech person, and suddenly I was like, who am I? Like, what is this? Like, what am I going to do? And one of the most, for me, pivotal moments was I found a mentor. And it was not what you think when you find a mentor. I went to the wrong talk at a women's leadership conference. I went to the wrong, I was in the wrong space, and it was a storytelling workshop. It was a authentic storytelling for leadership workshop. And there was this amazing woman named Marina Isaacson. I'll never forget it. And she gave it, it shook me. It shook me, this talk. She had executive women tell their life stories and tell really impactful stories that made them who they were. And there was something in me that was like, this woman needs to be in your life. And so I got up the courage to get her card and call her. And then when I finally call her, it's tens of thousands of dollars to work with her. She's a big deal, right? And I was like, oh shit, I'm a baby. I just left a startup. I have no money. And I'm so lucky that my partner at the time was just whatever, it's just money, figure it out. And she offered me this super discounted rate, which I still could not afford at all. But I ended up ended up going for it, and it changed my life. She would have me do things what is the river of your life? Draw it for me. She made me do art. Whoa. Which of course, it's kind of like Karate Kid style. You're just
yes.
Why are you making me do this? I don't want to do this. Stop. This is dumb. And then of course, halfway through that project, I'm sobbing and working through all this stuff that I never really knew I was carrying with me. And then lo and behold, we both one day, she just said to me, you're, hey, I want to take you on as my mentee. Let's just, don't worry about all the details of it. Let's just keep this going. And oh my gosh, I was, that was a really big turning point for me. And that's, I think, where being self-aware, becoming more, just more in my body. And interestingly, going through entrepreneurship gave me a lot of courage. Meeting her gave me a lot of self-awareness. And then suddenly the last piece of the transformation for me was my sexual liberation. I started to read books like Ethical Slut and holy shit, there's this whole non-monogamy thing. And then, being in touch with my queerness more now, but it was really those kinds of conversations that really helped me bloom as a human.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that part of your story, especially the fact that you went through this period of whether it's depression or just not knowing what you're going to do next. And then, as you say, going into the wrong talk. But as I was listening to you, I was thinking, sounds like you were in the right talk to me. Sounds like that was the right space.
You never know.
You
never know when you just never know what it's going to be. You never know if it's learning.
Into something.
Right. And I had given this woman I had no money. I just remember this very, very distinctly of oh my God, my partner at the time was so supportive and let me find the money to give this person the only money I had. And then the first thing she has me do is drawing stuff. And I'm I've made a huge mistake. I've made a huge mistake. What am I doing with my life? This is, and you know what? It ended up being absolutely exactly what I needed. And one thing I will say that I'm proud of myself throughout my whole life is that when my gut tells me to go, I go. And that's what happened. Also I was I was 20 years old and someone was come start a tech company with me. And I was there in a week later. It didn't take me a while. I just but I will agree with you. The healing that I've always really needed, I never knew I needed it. It was never something I ever knew.
And how is Marina being your mentor? Are you still a mentee of hers now? Are you still in touch with her now?
I love her. Yes.
Oh, good.
She just turned 70. She's in Italy right now on a life sabbatical. And if I am half as vivacious and half as in tune with who I am as this woman, by the time, I reach that ripe, beautiful time in my life, I will be happy.
And
I will be happy.
I love what you said too about the fact that along the journey, she said to you, I want to be your mentor, even if it wasn't phrased that way. But just sometimes, I think we're all searching for a mentor and just picking people and saying, can you be my mentor? Whereas there's not really a relationship or anything there. So I love that she in some ways was invested in you and saw how much you were invested in yourself too.
She saw that. She knew that money was a lot for me. She was working with executive women at big companies. And I was I am this little
help me,
help. Well, but I didn't say help. I was also very much oh, it's okay. We don't have to do this. But she heard it. She heard the pain in my voice. She tells me that when I came to her, I was asleep. She uses words asleep and in pain and lost. And she was right. And, she made me read this book. I'll share it. It's called The Fourfold Way by Andreas Arent. Okay. And Andreas Arent is an anthropologist, a Native American. So you'd imagine for me, I hate Tony Robbins. I think he's weird and just creepy. That will never feel right. And that. Okay. I want to say that I don't want to yuck other people's yum. He's motivated a lot of people and I respect Tony Robbins, but his message does not resonate with me.
With you.
No, that I need something a little bit more, there's just, and so Arena, she was mentored by this woman, this anthropologist, but she gave me her book, which is The Fourfold Way. I'm getting this massive tattoo around all of the teachings in it because it's really helped me form this is who I am. This is what I want to be. And it's around the 4 paths of leadership. And I won't go into it. I just wanted to share that book, but she gave me that, which was massive. And then she really, and again, she was this medicine. She taught me about my internal medicine. She taught me that there have been times I've called her when I'm about to make these risky and these really risky decisions, and she's my cheerleader going you do it, go for it. Everyone else will be telling me to be safe. And she's someone who's always just supported that fire in me, or that whatever is in me that wants to make those big leaps.
That's amazing. So The Fourfold Way, I'm going to see if I can find a link to that so everyone can find that in the other book you mentioned.
Yeah. Okay. And again, Ethical Slut's not a perfect book on the subject. There's lots of other ones, but that also had a really big impact on me.
Excellent. We'll find links to those. So tell me now then, how did this journey and all of these moments just of self-awareness for you and becoming clearer about who you are and who you want to be, how did all of this lead to you starting your business now, O.School?
Well, it's really about this observation that I have that a lot of women, we're disconnected from our own power. And I don't really believe in women's empowerment in that word because, you don't really need to give women power. They're born with this immense power already, but we're just conditioned through living in the societies that we live in. We're taught to forget that power, or it just causes us to totally be disconnected from it. And, and I think the kind of pain for me was growing up and nobody asking me what I wanted and no one teaching me how to ask for what I want and say no to what I didn't want. And that's what sexual politics and reproductive and learning about pleasure, that's what that is for me. It's not about sex. It's not about, like, it's also about that, but it's even deeper than that. And so what I was experiencing was, you know, when I could heal myself from shame, like I became unstoppable. And then I looked around and I was like, this is an epidemic in the world. Like, so, like, who do you know that doesn't have shame around something sexual in their life or something in their past? I grew up with religious shame, body shames, like slut shame, queer shame. They're just, I had it all. And, you know, it was funny because when my career was starting to like really, I was starting to show up. Like I got tapped to become a venture partner at a global venture capital firm at 24. And it was like such an opportunity. And this came about because I was more alive. And why was I more alive? It was because I was starting to figure out who I was. And for me, sex and pleasure are expressions of something really core to who I am. It's really core to love. And again, not all people connect to that way. I have lots of people in my life who are asexual, who just don't value sexuality, but they are also still liberated because they have the power and the tools to ask for what they want and say no to what they don't want. And so that's for me where it came from. It was personal, and then there was also just to step back from all of that. You know, I can't live in a world where so many people, you know, live with such shame and trauma around sexuality. For me, that's like I don't want to live in that world where we just expect people, especially women, gender diverse people, people of color, not to have the sex education and the pleasure education that they deserve. So there's like a problem that's like kind of bigger than me that connects me. And then there's also a problem that I personally experienced, which is I want to build a company that I wish I had when I was younger. Like I want to be that. And then because I know that there are just billions of other people who wish they had it too. And that's really where O.School came from, is both of those kind of dreams and missions together.
I love that. And for everyone listening, of course, I'll have a link, but the web address is O.School, which is perfect that you got that URL. I don't know how you did that. So it's literally O.School, O.School. I love it. Now tell me, what exactly do you want the company to do? How will it serve people? I know you're using video and some other things. So how will people be able to enter into O.School?
So right now, O.School is a shame-free platform for pleasure education, and it's powered by live streaming and live chat, right? So this is a place where people can go when they have problems, anywhere from how do I overcome my religious shame? How can I feel better about masturbating? Maybe you've had trauma in your life and you're trying to experience pleasure and connection again. Like we have people who can teach on these topics. So not condom on bananas. Not stuff like that, right? Like we're not focusing there. We're really focusing on the deeper, some deeper questions. And again, we're focusing on adults. So anywhere from people who are 18 all the way to like 70, right? I would say that's really our range, because a lot of people never got the sex ed. So I would say that we're focusing there. And right now we're very early, so it's an invite-only platform because I care about creating safer spaces that aren't full of harassment.
Right.
So there's a wait list on the site that people can sign up for, and then we're going to launch later this year. And we're visiting lots of universities, and we're talking with a lot of OBGYN. The gynecologists are great kind of communities that we're building, and then we're going to launch later this year.
I love that. So people will be able to sign up, and then, as you said, you'll see about inviting people to be a part of this community. And I see that you have 30 sex-positive professionals who will be offering live workshops on everything from the topics that you talked about. So it's really getting people in touch with professionals who can help them through some of these things that you mentioned. Absolutely. And these are relatable people who really believe in the same values that we do, that people should learn about sex and pleasure, and not just these fear-based ways that many people learn about sex, right? Like when you think about like a high school science class where people are getting sex ed, they're learning that there's these scary STDs and STIs out there, that you can get pregnant. Like it's everything wrong with sex.
Pretty much.
What they're taught, yeah.
And so what that has led to is that de facto in the world, not just in the United States, but in the world, most people are learning about pleasure and sex from pornography, hardcore pornography, that it's free. And I'm not anti-porn. I believe that there's a place for that type of entertainment. I think there's a lot of things wrong with the industry that need to be improved. But but people learning about sex and pleasure through pornography because nobody else in their life will talk to them about it, that is a big problem. It's like expecting kids to learn how to drive from Fast and Furious movies. It's just not what you want, right?
Andrea,
it's just not what you want.
Such a good analogy. You're so right. You're so right. Such a good analogy. And
there's nothing wrong with Fast and Furious movies,
it, but you don't want your 16-year-old to learn how to drive from it. Exactly. And that's what. Yeah. Go on. No, I'm sorry. I was just going to say it's interesting what you mentioned about kids learning about sex through porn. I was trying to recall the documentary that's not a documentary. It's a series. Rashida Jones is one of the producers on Netflix.
Hot Girls Wanted. Yeah.
Yes. Did you see? And they just taught some of those statistics. They used them throughout the series, just talking about how many young people now learn about sex from porn. And because it's usually it's one certain kind of scene or one certain kind of, act or things like that. There's no kind of really relationship. I feel like what you're talking about is more your relationship to sex, not just about having sex.
Exactly. I mean, consent.
Right.
I'm just, I'm really convinced that people, especially the people who are designing sex ed in this country, like especially the $2 billion that gets spent on abstinence-only education. Why, in all of that, do people not then teach about consent, right? Even if you can, because you need to learn how to talk about it, but we don't even go there. It's just so much shame around this idea. And so on a lot of things on our platform around communication, asking for what you want. Like I've traveled to many college campuses and it's very basic. It's like, how do I feel good about my genitals? I'm really ashamed about what my genitals look like, right? Labiaplasty, which is a surgery to remove outer labia, is one of the fastest growing cosmetic procedures in the country. Wow. And it's largely being driven by people's perception about bodies through the things that they watch. And again, there's nothing wrong with those, but it's because we don't have an open place to talk about it. And so there's things like that, which are just about accepting your body and being able to experience that. There's also the LGBTQ communities that we care about being, so one of my partners is trans. And one of the experiences that I experienced was that, I didn't know how to be with my first trans lover and I couldn't find anywhere to learn about that at one point. And it was, it was really kind of clear to me that, wow, this is what the internet was made for, but yet there aren't a lot of non-porn spaces to learn about sex on the internet. There's it's divided into two. It's like sex and everything else, right? And that's, so from a technology standpoint, that's what's interesting to me as well. And then to your point before, this is a unifying problem. It doesn't matter if you grew up in Oklahoma and you're straight and have 2 kids and are a mom, versus, like an Indian woman in Florida, a Filipino woman in San Francisco. Chances are, there are a lot of things that you can relate to around having troubles with orgasm and shame around asking for what you want. And these are the spaces that we're creating.
And I think it's so powerful. I think, too, just this idea of, as you mentioned a few times, the theme of lifting the shame of all of these conversations. I think that'll be such a big part of it for a lot of people. Whatever your experience is, sexuality and that kind of thing, if any kind of shame is associated with it, that'll be the thing that holds you back from ultimate pleasure or freedom and that kind of thing. In my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And this is the thing that, especially in this political climate,
right.
Reproductive rights are under attack. And I want to be on the offensive in the world. I don't believe that women should just survive. And men struggle too. I have to say, O.School's for everyone, but we're really focusing on women and gender diverse people. We have lots of content for lots of different people. But, I think specifically this idea that, reproductive rights are under attack in our country right now. And we believe that women should thrive, right? Should have access to a full access of education around their bodies and pleasure, not just basic health rights or basic, access to reproductive rights. I believe in more than that. I want to, stretch past that.
So how do you envision for O.School? Is it people will pay for a membership to the site, or how does it work from that standpoint? Or is
it will have a section for that eventually. But right now we're mostly just excited about getting this content out and building community. And this is one beautiful part about, venture capital. It's not perfect. And I have a lot of, ideas about how to make it better. But, that's why I chose to make this a for-profit company with venture capital, because I believe we can serve a lot more people this way.
Excellent. So how does that work for you? Do you have people who have invested so far in O.School? Oh, good.
Yep.
Of course you do.
I've raised $500,000.
Of course you did. I don't even know why I asked that.
No. I worked 7 years in tech, and like there's also this idea that while I was doing that, like, wow, did I sell out? I used to be an activist. I am an activist. That's the thing. Like, people want to put me in that category because I've gone this route, but I still absolutely identify as an activist. This is just a form of it that not a lot of activists have access to. Right. But because I I've been an investor, I've been an entrepreneur. My first company did pretty well. It's now has 5 offices, and we help a lot of businesses with their accounting and taxes, and they pay us money. So I've proven that I can make money. So that's a really, for me, has been helpful in kind of starting this movement, and creating safer spaces for people to talk about sex online.
It sounds like it's a great combination of your activism and then the venture capital side of you.
Absolutely.
Being able to pull it all together. Yeah, wonderful. I can't wait to see the future. Love it. O.School. Now, one of the things I know also mentioned about you on your website is this idea of having empathy superpowers. And I wanted to ask you about that. What are your empathy superpowers, and what does that mean?
So I'll quote the fourfold way. And for me, what empathy means, I think it's really helpful definition. So in the fourfold way, there's 4 paths of leadership, and the one that I immediately identified with is the healer. And the healer's superpower is paying attention to what has heart and meaning. And I feel like, for me, one of my superpowers is I typically don't need a lot of time with someone to figure out what they really care about and what their values are. Mm-hmm. And so this helped me be a better leader in my startup. It made me a better salesperson. It made me good at fundraising. I'm also a pitch coach and a storytelling coach for entrepreneurs. I'm retired, but I did that for a few years. And that for me is the importance of empathy in business. And I think it's funny because it's very, we kind of know it. I think a lot of people kind of assume that, this is a skill, but it's not really celebrated as much as other skills, especially not in the kind of tech culture where a lot of the CEOs aren't known for their ability to be emotionally intelligent.
Right.
But for me, I believe emotional intelligence isn't just something that's nice to have. I think it's a real driver of bottom line business savviness. And I think I'll end my answer with this kind of observation that I've seen, which is the whole problem with not enough women in tech and misogyny in tech, which is really talked about now, which I'm glad it is. What I think it misses out sometimes, though, is that misogyny in tech is more about femininity than actual women. Because I've worked with many powerful women in tech through the years, but it's really sometimes that we don't value empathy and emotional intelligence as something that should be in business. And that's what I think is also connected, which is an important, again, it's definitely also about women. It's also about family leave. It's also about equal pay. It's also about all these things. But what we need to always, bring in is about value systems. And we don't, sometimes value people being aggressive and having thick skin and all of that over more so, being connected to the fact that hey, emotional intelligence will make your company more money. Because that's ultimately what capitalism cares about, yet it's never talked about in that way.
How can understanding the value of empathy help us specifically in our businesses, as you sort of mentioned there, for entrepreneurs listening who need to sort of tap into that, or who may not realize they need to sort of tap into that part of themselves?
The number one challenge, I think, of every founder I've ever met really is recruiting. I would say recruiting's harder than, so there's a couple of ways, but I would say one is, we need to be leaders and to get the best people to work with us. And if you don't have a lot of empathy powers, or you haven't, and I believe that you're not just born with empathy, you can grow to be more emotionally intelligent. And I believe that without these skills, you will not keep your talent. And if you don't get the best people to work with you, you're going to die as a company. That is the biggest one for me, is being able to understand what has heart and meaning in everybody in your organization, or at least being able to lead them in the value side of the business, is really important. And I'll just outline it there. Like the CEO only has 3 jobs in a company, like that are really core. One is to make sure the company doesn't run out of money, that has enough capital to do what it needs. The second is to recruit the best people possible. And the third is to like hold the vision of the company and keep the company aligned to that vision through the lifetime of the company. Those are the 3 jobs of CEO, and all of those require empathy.
Mm-hmm. And I know you mentioned that you're retired as a pitch coach, and I know you've coached thousands of people or thousands of pitches and helped at least hundreds of founders. But I wanted to ask you, since we were talking about empathy, does empathy also play into helping us when we're giving our pitch as well? Or is that about something else for people who were pitching to?
No, it's absolutely empathy. It's absolutely empathy. And pitching, because it's not about us.
Mm-hmm.
People think pitching is about what you care about and what you value and what's important to you. And especially social impact entrepreneurs is very challenging, right? Because like, for example, like I got into O.School and I'm building this company and I want to build this like really huge platform because of like so many reasons that are personal and have to do with social impact and making the world a better place. But you can better believe that I'm not talking like that to investors, because what they care about is making returns, right? And so it'd be really easy to say that no, like pitching's about like making sure the other person knows how passionate and in love I am with my own business. But that's just another way of like, that's just ego for the founder, right? And so what's hard about pitching is it's not about you. It's about the other person. And if the other person doesn't share your values, which let's face it, most investors don't share the values of the founders, like in terms of, like an investor needs to bring returns back, right? For themselves or the people that have put money in them. And so understanding that, I think is absolutely the number one, like very common, at least if not number one of the most common mistakes I see entrepreneurs make when they're pitching.
One of the things I love that you said or I should say I do love it, but it was one of the things that was the most sobering that I saw you say in a video was people meaning investors aren't as interested in you as you think they are.
No one is. I actually I believe that once you accept that nobody is as interested in you and what you're doing as you think they are, like you can make magic happen. Because It means your message is going to be shorter, it's going to be briefer, it'll be more targeted to what they care about. You'll do more good in the world if you just accept that. And I think it's like, it's something I had to learn, right? Like it's kind of hurts. It's like, it's your baby. O.School's my baby. So when someone doesn't care about sexual liberation for the world, it hurts me. It hurts, right? But I know that in these meetings, I need to get that money because without that money, I can't do the impact. So you kind of have to just like focus. And again, right. It's not about being fake. It's not about not being authentic. I'm authentic in every meeting I take, but it's about designing the delivery, the content, everything to what the other person cares about so that you can make the world about, like you can do your work, right?
Right.
That's not their job. It's not, this is, I think, another thing I would say that kind of is hard for people to hear. Sometimes I'll hear a pitch and I'll tell the entrepreneur, like, it's not your job to educate the other person. It's your job to get them interested in your opportunity, right? There's a lot of people that are like, oh no, but if you just understood how amazing and interesting and everything that I'm doing, you're just going to invest. And that's just not the case.
It's not your job to educate the person. Okay, interesting. And
I mean, if you're in like a niche space, again, there's lots of things. Like if you're in a super niche and technical space, and you're going to need to educate a little bit, but that education is a very direct goal, very direct purpose. But like, for example, like if an investor's not getting it and you're just kind of harping on like all these, things, and I guess it goes back to empathy. You have to, there has to be really always that understanding of why and what you're talking about.
And to be able to, I would think in those cases, be able to read the room kind of too. You can tell if you're losing people in statistics as opposed to when you switch and start talking about, as you said, what the return would be.
And asking questions, right? So many entrepreneurs don't realize, like I sat on the other side of the table for over 2 years at 500 startups. So I made investments. I heard pitches. That's why, my pitch coaching was really, really great to do then because I was helping entrepreneurs raise money. I helped entrepreneurs raise like $80 million or something like that in my career. And I didn't do it by just like teaching them how to pitch. I taught them how to ask good questions, how to read the room. Like some investors are dominant. Some people are very fact-based. Some people are very quiet. Some people are really social. Like some investors, like you can't start pitching them until you know what city they're from and how many kids they have, and like, and then like learning that is all powers of empathy.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say, Andrea, that entrepreneurship has taught you about yourself as a woman?
Oh my goodness. I like going against authority. I like power. I went into the nonprofit world for a while because I care so much about making the world a better place. But what I didn't like about the world of social impact and nonprofits as much is you just couldn't take risks. And as you can see, I think from my story, I'm a risk taker. And it's difficult and it's scary, but I've learned about myself that I thrive in those situations. I thrive when I'm uncomfortable. I thrive when I'm going out on a limb. I thrive in those. And so entrepreneurship is great for me because I'm able to take risks and dream big, and people, like, I'm just able to work with such amazing people. Like, that's my job. Like, I am the whenever I'm in a room with people that I have recruited on my team at O.School, I am never the smartest person in the room, which makes me feel really proud of myself, right? And and I know that the reason they work with me is because I'm holding this vision and I'm doing that. So entrepreneurship has taught me about just myself and risk, and also in terms of what I've had to grow. Like, let's talk about the things that I didn't do well that entrepreneurship's helping me be better at, which is saying no more, right? And as an entrepreneur, you only can do one thing at a time. Like, you can't work on everything at a time because you have limited resources. And so it's really taught me how to say no. And so, I don't respond to emails that quickly anymore. I made that conscious decision because that's not going to make, answering emails is not going to be the thing that makes O.School a huge success. Right? I have to always be asking myself, what is the absolute highest impact activity, and just do that. And that's really painful because you want to do everything. You want to take care of everyone. You want to make everyone happy. But that's also something about entrepreneurship that I think anyone, even non-entrepreneurs, can learn from this kind of like environment.
So you mentioned your team at O.School. What would you say overall in your personal and professional life that your support network looks like?
A lot of fierce women, a lot of fierce queer people, a lot of just people who've taught me about gender and race and like all of that. That's really important to me, right? Because we have these values, and it's really important for me to surround myself with people from different. I have a very age diverse team. I have a very personality diverse team, so that my support network in my company, I couldn't be luckier and more grateful for all of them. In life, I have I just couldn't be more excited about my pleasure professional community at O.School. Like, a lot of them are personal friends of mine, and they just constantly every day inspire me to live my best self, just live my best life, and to be unapologetic about the things that I want, the things that I have, right? That's huge for women, because we never think we're always too much, right? We want too much, we are too much, we say too much, we're just too much. And I've got an army of amazing people who are just always like, nope, you deserve it, get it all. Get it all, do the most. Don't feel bad. Do the most, have it all, have all the sex, have all the pleasure, have none of the sex, none of the pleasure. Do what you want, but do it at your absolute highest expectations. And that is what I think only clicked for me personally last year. I don't think before last year I was ever really comfortable living in the truth and the authenticity of what I truly wanted. And without getting to that point, I never would have been able to dream as big for O.School, right? So my support system, I'm like, it's like hard not to get emotional when you think about it. I mean, Jess, I'm going to her sleepover tonight, her birthday. She individually has done so much for me, and she takes no shit from me. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm supposed to say that, but she takes nothing. Like, anytime I think smaller for myself, she's the first person, and she won't use nice words sometimes. She'll be like, you're being an idiot right now.
I have a friend like that.
Dream as like, why are you playing small? She'll just ask me all the time that you're playing small right now. You want bigger. Why aren't you going for the biggest thing that you want? And so that's, I'm really lucky in that. Also my parents, my brother and sister, I've had a lot of love in my life. I've been I'm here because I've been loved to be here in this way, and I feel really grateful for that.
That's beautiful. So in closing then, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Well, since I'm on that and it's her birthday, I would say, my first co-founder, Jessica Ma. She thought bigger for me than I thought for myself. And without her, just her unwavering belief and showing up for me and holding me to higher expectations than I ever held for myself and dreaming bigger for me again, I can't be more grateful for that. She really made a huge impact on me, and I can't wait to sleep in your bed later. Jess, happy birthday.
I love it. So tell us, Andrea, how can we support you? I'll have links to everything. Thank you for all the fantastic resources that you mentioned here, but just for people to get in touch with you and find out more about O.School, anything that you want to share with us.
Oh my goodness. So the Fourfold Way and all the other resources are great. I would say that if I had to give like one last thing to part with is, live your life. We talk about enthusiastic consent. I have to kind of go back to O.School. I'd love everyone's support. Please like us on our Facebook and Instagram. We're trying to build that community. And on Facebook and Instagram, we're O.School, but we spell out the dot. So it's EDOT school.
Okay.
On both of those would be amazing. I'd love to keep in touch with everyone who found us through here. And, we talk a lot about consent. We talk a lot about enthusiastic consent, especially for women, right? Who never learned how to say yes. Right? Not just like how to say no, but like how to say yes. And I guess my last piece of advice is not just in your personal sex intimacy life, but in any part of your life, do what makes you go, hell yes. Whatever gives you that enthusiastic yes inside, that's what you should be doing. And anything that's less than that, dig and find what will give you that.
Excellent. Andrea, thank you so much. Hold on just a second. All right, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Andrea Barrica. Be sure to go to supportissexypodcast.com so you can see links to all the resources and the books and the people that she mentioned in this episode, as well as to find out how to get in touch with her and to visit O.School, which is such a great concept. I can't wait until it launches this fall. Supportissexypodcast.com. Just search Andrea, Andrea, and her show notes page will pop up. Also, remember, wherever you're listening, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast. So whether you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Google Play or SoundCloud, we're in all of those places. Please make sure you subscribe to the podcast. It helps me and it helps the show to continue to grow. I want to make sure that you don't miss an episode, so make sure you subscribe. And as I always say, if you love the show, please be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcasts and let me know what you think. All right, I always love to hear from you. So again, I appreciate you all listening. And until next time, you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.